Alright, so we're going to try something here. I'm going to see if I can work my way through doing a tutorial here on the bike. I'm planning on sandblasting it this weekend because I'm already sick of this paint job. I did it about a year ago. So I'm going to dismantle the whole thing, tear it down, see if any of the bearings need replaced again, like on the head tube and whatnot. I'll just kind of walk you through it here on the way I do it, and it's not the newest bike in the world, so I don't have the fancy integrated headset or anything like that. So come along with me. Alright, first things first, you're gonna need some basic tools, and by basic I mean basic. All but 3 bolts on my bike that are Allen will take a 6mm. I can even take my wheels off with a 6mm Allen key. The only 3 that aren't a 6mm are going to be my seat clamp and then my brake posts, I guess if you want to call them, where the brake attaches, cranks, headset, all that is all going to be a 6mm. And then I've just got a socket wrench and a combo wrench. My box end happens to ratchet, which is a plus, but this will be just to take off the wheels, and that's where I'm going to start. Once those are loose, you can just slide your tire forward, and then my chain's pretty tight, but just kind of slides off. I got a flat tire last night, but usually you gotta deflate the tire to squeeze it through the brakes. But there's your rear wheel. So we'll do the front. So on the front, it's got these little washers. I don't know how well those are gonna show. Other than the regular ones, that's got this little pin on it. Those just lock into place on the forks. Alright, so now that the wheels are off, I can move on to the next thing. I'm going to take the cranks off, my sprocket and all that next. There's 2 bolts on each crank. You've got one here that kind of tightens it down, and the other one here just holds it onto the actual axle. So we'll pop these off quick and then go from there. 2 cap bolts are out, so now the pedals in theory just slide off. Oh, and I've got these loose. So 1, 2. Doesn't for me it matters. This one you can see has got this little post on it. This one does not. But this goes on your sprocket side, in my case, because got my spacers there. As you can see, the sprocket, pretty dirty, has this little hole here. So this lines up all together like so. And that's pretty much what drives. You can kind of see it's a little egged there. But this is a 25 tooth sprocket, Verde. I mainly just picked it because of the purple color. It matched the wheel I was going for. So next we can just slide the axle right out. That was fairly painless this time. I've had trouble with it before. So then on your bottom bracket, you've got these 2 pieces that are on your sprocket side. You got this little spacer here, and then this it's basically a dust cover, and those fit together kind of like so. And then on the other side you just got this other nice beveled dust cover. So I'm going to quick kind of slap this back together in the order it came off. It just kind of keeps things a little neater, and then I don't lose anything. There you have it. It's all kind of slapped back together. I didn't put the pedals opposite. It it just takes up a little less space this way for when I throw it all in the car to go home. I don't know, a week ago I just bought some chain lube because mine was completely dry, but I happened to go around and pretty much spray anything that moved. Some people recommend it, some people don't. I guess it's kind of personal preference. I like it because it keeps things a little quieter. I like the peace of mind that there's some lubrication in it, so you're not just grinding stuff apart. There's some local trails that I kind of ride on. They're more mountain bike trails, but I get dirt all over the place. So that works its way into every nook and cranny, and at least if I got something in there kind of flushing it out, then it helps. So next I'm just gonna pop my brakes off. That's super straightforward. There's 2 bolts on posts. There's a spring retainer inside of it. It's not gonna pop off at you, you don't have to worry about that. It's just kind of a nuisance to put back together. I'm terrible at tuning brakes. But super straightforward, just undo the screws, both arms of the brake come off. Then you got this split cable back here. Get a little closer. You got this. So then you have this split cable here, which just pops out down on this end. This is bolted to this cable, so you'll have to undo this pinch bolt. This will come out of the frame and then up into our brake lever. Another thing to note, these brake posts are one of the ones that I said that aren't the 6mm that everything else seems to use, along with my seat clamp. I don't know off the top of my head either, so we're gonna find out. It's way too small. Alright, that's the one. What do we got here? Five millimeter, so just a hair smaller. Alright, so there right away, when I started to loosen it up, it immediately popped off. On the other side, which is good, you gotta take it apart anyways. Now, I highly recommend having some quart-size Ziploc baggies, or even the really small ones like the snack size. They're super helpful for putting all your pieces together. You can write on them, label them, so you don't lose anything. Do as I say, not as I do. I forgot mine all up in my apartment. But here's our pieces. We got the bolt that goes through and screws into the frame. This little piece will pop off, and there's the spring inside of it. I'm not going to take that apart right now because it's not super necessary. We're just removing everything from the frame. Alright, so we got this little nut, a washer, oops, the hanger itself, and another washer, and then the, oh, I forget what they call them, but there's a bolt, and it's got a hole drilled right under the head of the bolt that goes through the threads, and that's where your cable goes through, and you just got, well, the cable goes through there, and the nut spins, tightens it all up, and that keeps the cable from moving back and forth, so you can adjust your brake tension. My least favorite part is that it's got these little cable ends on them. These guys. And those are pinched on there, and I don't think I've got pliers with me up here, so we're gonna fight with that to get that off. Cable end, bolt. See, you can kind of see the hole that is through the bolt. That's where your cable goes. And basically I just grip the bolt and rip the end off the cable. Next, working our way down, there's a little nut there. You just back that off, and you can spin this bolt right out of the frame. So you'll just have to take this bolt off, and then you can slide, my bike has this cable guide on it, slide the cable out. I've got some zip ties there, worry about that later. And now we're all the way up to the brake handle. This is kind of an important thing. I don't know if you get to see me, all that backlighting. Kind of an important thing to note. Quality brake cables are gonna have a really nice, fine, tight braid to them, like this, and they're gonna look smooth. A cheap brake cable is gonna really fray out at the end when you cut them, regardless of what you cut them with. You can heat them up, you can do whatever you want, they always fray. Ask me how I know. This happens to be, I believe it's an Animal brake cable. I bought it a long time ago. Oh, there we go. Yep, an Animal brake cable. Bought it off Dan's Comp years ago. I don't even think they sell it anymore the last time I looked. But really, any name brand, popular BMX brand, whoever it is going to have a quality cable. If you just buy a generic one, or if you're working on, maybe you bought an off-brand bike because you're just getting into the sport. That's where I started. I'm still terrible at riding. I just really enjoy it. If you're looking for a cheap upgrade, do your brake cables. This is it started out as a Haro X1, I believe 2009. Possibly 2008. It's been a while, but it used to have the gyro on it and all that stuff, and I ended up fraying both of those cables inside of the housings. And when I went to get them replaced, the bike shop was like, "Oh, it's gonna be like 25 bucks for each of them," and you know, I was like freshman in high school, I think. I didn't have my driver's license yet, so I was still kind of like into biking, and I was like, well, I don't want to spend 50 bucks on brake cables, so I just straight cabled it. And honestly, I haven't regretted it because I don't do bar spins. At least not yet. Maybe it's on the list of things to do. But you can spend anywhere from, I think, like $3 up to like $30 on a brake cable. This was, I think, 10 bucks, and I'll probably buy something that's 10 bucks again. Like I said, any major BMX brand is going to have a quality brake cable. Buy one of those. Next, we're just going to have the forks off and the handlebars. Probably start with the handlebars, move our way to the headset, or take off the stem, excuse me. Handlebars, stem, headset, drop the forks out. There you'll see the bearings. I don't know what I'm going to do with those. Honestly, I should probably go buy some new ones. I've just, in the past, just clean them out super well so there's zero grease or dirt in them, and then just repacked them with regular grease. And I don't know, we'll see. You can never tell. So just like I did with my cranks, I put everything back together here. It's just finger tight, but all the pieces are there. I can't lose them. I'm gonna probably just leave it attached to the brake lever. It's simple, it's effective. I do it with everything I work on. It's probably my favorite little tidbit in working in the garage. Always put stuff back where it belongs. You can't lose it. So we're gonna move on to my handlebars. That's just 4 bolts on top of the stem, 6mm. We'll quick spin those off, and then we'll kind of get into the dirtiness of what's taking apart my headset because it's not sealed, which isn't common these days anymore. Everyone just goes to the sealed headset, and I don't blame them. It's super simple. Super simple. However, I don't even know if my frame is compatible with those integrated headsets. I haven't looked into it. It's whatever. We'll just move on to the next part. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now they're loose. So you just get this cap. That's all it is. Take it off. Handlebars pop right off. This is where it can get a little bit tricky if you're not totally aware what you're doing. There's 3 bolts to take the stem off. There's 1 on top, and then there's 2 on the sides, at least in my case. I usually start with the 2 on the sides just to get things started. The 1 on the top, I've got, bring the camera over here. I've got this little cap, and then there's a bolt in there. That's, see, that's 4 that aren't 6mm on the bike. That is what holds everything together, basically. On the newer bikes, you usually see it like recessed into the stem. So the fork comes up through the head tube. You've got all your bearings and your headset pieces, and then your stem slides over that, pinches around. That's what these 2 bolts are for. It pinches around the fork, which keeps everything in line, and then the top bolt keeps everything together. That should spin freely. Mine doesn't, and that's why I was thinking I might need to get some new bearings in there because it's pretty rough, which is too bad, but I don't do bar spins and triple tail whips and everything else, so not really a huge concern for this guy. Now these, because they are just pinch bolts, you don't have to worry about spinning them all the way out. Just get them plenty loose. You don't want to have anything pinching the stem to the fork. Yeah, so this is just 5mm again. Your bike may be different. Always check so you don't strip out the bolts. That is a huge nightmare if you do strip out a bolt. So bolt comes with a washer. I got another little cap. Those go together, and voila. There's my Haro stem, full of grease. Alright, so I'm kind of doing double duty with a light here, but you can see the cap bolt that's kind of sitting on top of the stem. The bolt just goes through that cap, and that cap, because the bolt is resting inside of it, when you tighten it, the cap pulls the stem down. Then inside there, hopefully you can see the threads. That's what's pulling everything together. That's inside the fork. Now, as you can see, my bike had that gyro on it. That piece is pressed onto the frame, so I did not ever take it off. It's not hurting anything. Basically, I just have a bunch of spacers here. I believe 4 of them to keep everything spaced out so there's as little slop as possible. I do have some rock in it back and forth. That's just because the bike's old and worn out, and again, maybe because the bearings need to be replaced. Kind of seeing a common theme here. So we're just going to slide the spacers off. There's this dust cap here, that part that wiggles around right there. We're going to slide that off, slide the bearings out, and then we'll pop the fork out the bottom, and then there's another dust cap and bearings underneath. And I believe that's all, if I remember correctly. So we'll get to that next. Yep, so I got 4 spacers. These days, usually the headsets just come with as a one-piece setup, or some of them are even adjustable. They look like little stair sets flipped on top of each other, so you can kind of set how tall you want your setup to be. It just kind of helps if you want a little more bar height or a little less bar height, as long as you got enough room on your fork to play with it. Now this is kind of a mess because I've got a bunch of grease in there, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just makes it really messy to deal with. So dust cap, and then we have our bearing retainer. Yeah, not terribly dirty. I mean, I did just do this like maybe a year ago, so it's only got 1 summer's worth of riding and a couple weekends since. But there's a little bit of play in the bearings. Like I said, in better lighting, I can go into more depth about cleaning these out and everything else. but it's probably just worth it. It'll be cheap to replace. So, that comes out like that. You can see the fork's got that little bearing retainer built in on it. Try and set this down. And these bearings also have a dust retainer on it, or a dust seal on them, and then this black piece on the bottom of the frame. This black piece then holds the bearings. That's like the other side of the retainer. And that's all I've got. There's a ton of grease up inside of there. I greased the entire length of the top of the fork when I put it in. Really, there's never a time when you can't have enough grease on something like this, just because in this application where the bearings aren't sealed, that grease can escape, and those dust seals are a little worn out. So what happens is the grease kind of works its way out as you're spinning all the parts, and you just kind of lose that grease. Magically disappears. If we look at the fork here though, you can see some of that grease hanging off. Like I said, I've got a ton of it on there. I'm gonna have to clean this junk off probably before I put this in my car, as well as all this mud that I got on it yesterday. But what's interesting is in the middle there where it's like not painted, you can see the grease is still kind of red. That's the color of the grease when it's clean and fresh. And then up top, where it's kind of that gray color, is closer to where the bearings sit and where everything is attached to it on the top. And what that's from is all the dirt that gets inside of there. So if you think everything's all sealed and clean, think again. It's not. But nothing looks like it's in terrible condition, so that is a plus. So here's the frame. All we've got left is the chain, which I don't have a chain breaker, and my seat, my cool jean seat. So we're just gonna take off the seat clamp and pop the seat off, and then we're pretty much done disassembling things. Seat clamp comes right off, goes back on the seat post, and there you have it.